Good morning and thank you for joining us on our webinar regarding studio models with RadioMan. I have here a couple of colleagues as a panelist, Jorma Kivelä and Olli-Pekka Lukkarinen from Jutel, and our guest today is Mr. Pål Hansen from VGTV Norway. He will give his insights regarding working with RadioMan in podcast studios. While we are waiting for late arrivals to our webinar, I will give you some backgrounds of Jutel. The company has been established in 80s. The first decade we were providing turnkey radio stations, and in 90s we started to focus on software, and that was the birth of RadioMan. And now we are in sixth generation of RadioMan cloud-based radio automation solution. Due to cloud architecture, we are studio and location independent. That's what we are going to talk today. RadioMan in the cloud is not just a playout system. It has a powerful automation features for handling multiple radio stations and IP over audio streams in the cloud. If you have been attending our earlier webinars with 2W.com, you have learned that we have also included IP over audio distribution with Moin software to our product, and it helps our customers to control also the distribution part. So this is the future audio technology for radios. And then I will show a video, and after that we can continue with studio models with Jorma Kivelä.
RadioMan is a full-range cloud-based radio broadcasting system for commercial and public radio broadcasting. Jutel is one of the most experienced media and radio automation solution providers in the world. RadioMan is next-generation radio broadcasting platform. We serve the world's leading media operators in Europe, North America, Middle East, and Africa. Visit us at utel.fi.
Okay, Jorma, now it's your turn to introduce the studio models.
Okay, thank you a lot. So I will be talking about studio configurations with the RadioMan system, and in general, the RadioMan system, we are talking about cloud installations. Naturally, the system can be also built in-house on virtual servers or physical servers, but here we are talking mostly about cloud installations. And I have here a few examples of different studio configurations. So that what we are starting from is a very light studio configuration. When we are in this configuration, we are actually transmitting from the cloud, so that the program is produced in the cloud. There is also can be processing in the cloud, streaming codec that can provide for streaming services and feed to the tower company or feed directly to the transmitter site. And the actual playout and mixing unit we call RadioMan Media Node is in this case in the cloud, as well as all the RadioMan backend services with databases, files, publishing interfaces, traffic interfaces, and also we can have all the planning tools and long-term planning, short-term planning, media management, music management, that kind of in the cloud. So this is not just a playout system. And in this simple configuration, we can have very light studios. The studios are based on browser-based PCs and possible USB mixers or just headset connected to the browser PCs. And we can have multiple of these for if we want to have multiple locations. This kind of configuration is useful for small stations, stations with multiple locations, regional stations, which are regional units. Also, educational institutes are using here these configurations, and temporary stations. And here in the cloud, the central part of the media node is, it handles the playout functionality, play channels, card channels. It can handle also external feeds from other stations or sources, and it has WebRTC connectivity with the workstations browsers, so you can comment the program here, and you can also hear what's going on. So this is the simplest configuration we have or can have. Then if we go a little further, we can have a slightly or similar configuration, but so that we have a more powerful studio configuration running, so that actually this configuration we still have the playout system in the network, in the cloud, and the studio is used for producing the microphone mixes, for hybrid, for telephone controls and that kind of stuff, extra connectivities, and the feed from the studio can be arranged, for instance, with the SRT codec directly to the media node, or naturally we could use also WebRTC, but we are recommending in these occasions the SRT connection. And still with this kind of semi-light installations, we can have remote operations, remote stations with just WebRTC and HTML5 connectivity. This kind of configurations, they are nice to use with stations where there are multiple locations, also for regional stations, and there are educational institutes that utilize this kind of connection. And with this connection, you can see that there's still the feed to the transmitting chain is from the cloud. If we go further, we can do so that if when we have a station with the existing infrastructure, or stations with traditional workflows, we want to fully utilize the audio console functionality. What we can do then is that we can bring the media node into the studio environment. And the connectivity here can be, it can be analog, it can be naturally AS, digital AS EBU, it can be IP-based AS67, done the live wire, and so on. So all the different options. And in this configuration, the the feed to the tower company or transmitters is let's say traditional way via codec to tower company and to streaming services. And the cloud in this occasion is used for running the backend services and that kind of functionality, so that the same backend can, for instance, run multiple stations and serve multiple stations. And so this is a good configuration for regional units with local transmitters and that kind of configurations. And when we go still further with the configurations, there is the possibility that we have the transmitters locally, so that the feed is from the studio via codec, or it can be also STL link, whatever. And in these cases, typically the processing here is here between the codec and the tower company, or in this region. And in this configuration, we have the media node layout in the cloud, and we actually take the program material, the layout material from the media node to the studio, and within the studio we sum the layout signal with the microphones, telephone hybrids, and extra connectivity signals from the local studio. And the layout levels here, if it's needed, we have virtual faders on the studio user interface for control purposes. And listening feedback is arranged within the audio console. And if we want to have other stations or other contributors in the cloud in other locations, it can be arranged. There's just some arranging with N-1 feeds and so on, depending on whether, for instance, the remote transmissions are totally controlled from the external studios, or do we want to have arrangements where there are multiple studios contributing simultaneously and speaking to each other. So that's not drawn here, but that's possible. And this is quite good configuration with companies that want to centralize the actual IT infrastructure within the cloud, so that they don't have to bother so much on the regional units or local IT infrastructure, and also stations with multiple, or companies with multiple sites. And then when we go further, the same configurations can be, or system can be run also for centralized network station. This is a configuration where if we have a main broadcast and needs for localized advertisement or localized jingles or some localized other material run. The configuration here is drawn as a more physical infrastructure, so that we have the audio infrastructure of the station running here, but the configuration can be also built within the cloud environment if needed. Here, what goes on is that the studio is pretty much traditional. There are the playout channels coming to the audio console, and there's the microphones, hybrids, and other external feeds. And then this main program goes to the media nodes, external media nodes or localization media nodes, which take the material from the central feed, and then there is the localization play, and that goes as a program out and a processor. The processors can be either standard, in this case, standard physical boxes, or it's also possible to utilize software-based processors here. And the localization can be done either so that the playout is just summed to the feed, so that in those cases the main feed is silent at that time, or there is a mixing and fade out, fade in for the external signal. And the media nodes can handle also external other feeds, so that if there is, for instance, a feed from local football field or something like that, it can be arranged. And also there can be local programming run in this kind of configurations. And there is signaling from the studio to start up the localized media nodes, or it can be based on time-based slots. And the whole data is here on the cloud backend servers. There's also information on all the localization needs, and there's the traffic interfaces, publishing interfaces. Also, there can be the music selection interface to utilize external music selection, or we can also utilize the internal music selection, multi-channel music selection system of the RadioMan system. So this is the central production for localization. And then if we go further in the configurations, this is centralized network station, but then if we have a radio network with affiliates, there typically there is the main hub, which is producing the programming, main programming for the affiliates, and then the affiliates use parts of the programming, or all of the programming, or just some time slots during the day with the material what can be then done is that we have the main broadcast hub here running the RadioMan system. In this picture, I have drawn the media node in the cloud. It's also possible that this is in the studio environments here. So this is the media part or media hub part. And then we have the distribution part. So typically the central station, it distributes the programming to a lot of affiliates, and each affiliate has its internal, within its own back-end database. It has marked up what slots it is utilizing for programming, and the other part of the day it is running its own localized programming and material. And what is also possible here is that we have, for instance, within the RadioMan system, we have a publishing interface, so that the programming which goes out or is produced within here in the hub, it can be published to a distribution site, so that the stations, the affiliates here, can then pick up those programs and utilize them as time shift or on another day or as part of their programming. And here we can see a very simple configuration where we have a very light studio running this affiliate, and the affiliate is running their program material to the antenna towers and also to streaming services. And for instance, with the two devices, we can produce multiple different versions of streaming simultaneously. And then we can add here internal processing, so that it's also possible to have different processors for the FM distribution and another for streaming services. And here we can see, I have not drawn here, but there can be the other affiliates. Typical number of affiliates is a lot. And what is nice here is that as both the main hub feed and the affiliates receiving the material, they are within the same cloud environment. This is inside the cloud, so that we don't have to bother so much with packet losses and that kind of stuff, as if we would be just utilizing common internet here. So this is much more sturdy configuration in that sense. And then we can go to production side, and this is where Pål is going to continue. But one of the configurations which is possible with RadioMan is that we can embed or use the browser interface parallel to a control system, for instance, in this case, the Lavo control, and then utilize the RadioMan media node. In this case, I have put here a physical box media node, so that we can run small programs and record them as a for further production. A similar approach for all IP studios or multiple studios can be run also, so that the RadioMan control is put inside the Lavo control surface or browser control. It's also possible to embed the RadioMan user interface, the playout user interface, into some consoles, audio consoles, which support embedded browser interfaces inside the console screens. And on the RadioMan side, what we can do also is that we can take, for instance, the card wall to a separate sheet, or we can also have, for instance, a separate tablet for support for giving the control interfaces and card wall user interfaces, so that it can be done according to the studio physical layout or studio furniture, how it's furnished. And with this configuration in mind, I will give the speech actually to Markku and Pål. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jorma. Okay, Pål, then you can continue with your presentation.
Thank you, and good morning. Yeah, my name is Pål. I'm head of operations here at the TV Ops department at VGTV. And for those of you that don't know VGTV, we are a part of VG, which is Norway's largest news media house. And VG is then again owned by Schibsted. So historically here in VGTV, we have been in the forefront when it comes to web TV. But we have also, during the last years, been experimenting with podcast production and podcast distribution. And we have seen that the interest for podcasts here in Norway, especially, is quite high. And last year, Schibsted acquired Podme, which is a Swedish company that delivers a podcast platform that also makes it possible to monetize on podcasts. And at the same time, Schibsted attracted the largest names on the top podcast top lists here in Norway. And they are all now a part of our media group, and they are several of them are coming from the national broadcaster NRK, and they are now all producing and delivering their podcasts through our portals. And VGTV is now producing all these podcasts, and us in the TV Ops team are now delivering all the systems and building the studio facilities to handle these operations. And from before, we had the two small, quite relatively simple setup studios. And we are now building 6 more modern studios, and we are also going to upgrade the 2 old studios. So in the end, we will have up 8 studios producing podcasts here in our building in Oslo, and 5 of these studios will run RadioMan. And in these studios, there will be, I guess, up to 3 productions every day in each studio. So it will be like somewhere between 20 and 25 productions every day in these studios. And we have been very happy to meet with Jutel, and we didn't have much experience with radio from before, but we have been working very good with them, and also with Lavo. building a modern facility with modern technique. Everything is handled from Jutel's side. Everything is handled through their web portal and down to our local media node here, running virtual servers, and all the studios will have their own playouts from RadioMan. And I just wanted to share with you a little bit sneak peeks on how the studios will look like when they are finished. We have two of the studios are finished now. I don't have any pictures of them, but I have some pictures here of the studios that is soon to be finished. So this is the facility that we are building in what we call the Podme floor here in our building. It's containing 3 studios with the different looks, with the 3 attached control rooms. And as you see to the left there, we have 3 editing bays for audio editing. You can, of course, also edit video there. We have, from start, we will have a multi-camera production in 2 of the studios, doing a multi-cam recording of all 4 cameras. And then you can pick up again the camera production and make a multi-camera edit of the podcast also. That is mainly used for social media. So we don't deliver video of the whole podcast out streamed out to the audience. That is only audio. But we use the video production to make funny videos to attract the young group on social media and Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat. So we can try and track them into our platform. And see here, if you can see this is Studio 3A, so it will look like this. All the studios, as you will see here, will have different looks. This is more the playful studios. You can, of course, change out the neon signs here, and you can, and it's LED lights in the pink fields here, so you can change colors. This is the center studio, Studio 3B, a little bit more office-like look. And the last studio is more like the news podcast studio production is going to look like this. So then we can have screens so we can change out the backgrounds and stuff like that. And all of these studios will run RadioMan. And we have today actually set up a temporary studio that has been producing with RadioMan since before Christmas. And so some of these productions are already running in our temporary studio. We just took a meeting room, made some acoustic adjustments, and put in the systems that we are going to use when we move down in the 3rd floor with this studio. Just wanted to show you a picture of that. Here you can see this is just an ordinary meeting room table. And here you can see we have the RadioMan cart wall running on an iPad actually. And we have 2 of these in the studio. So not only the producer can run the cart wall, but also even one of the other talents sitting on the other side of the studio can run the cart wall. So then they can, run funny noise audio sticks and stuff like that, and that makes quite funny situations sometimes when they argue about running the most funny audio tracks. So and as you see in the center here, it's a touchscreen PC that is running the Lavo Power Core. This is also actually inspired, I think, a little bit by Yle, how this setup is done, and also other sales stations in Europe are running this with. So each channel and each microphone has their own a little bit, as you can see, touch area on the touchscreen there. and we're using Logic for doing the recording. So we are quite Mac based here in our production facilities. So we try to use Macs where we can. Every edit station also is running Logic and Final Cut Pro. So yeah, this is a little bit how we are operating. We are, of course, just in the beginning of running all this, and RadioMan and Jutel are helping us with setting up the new studios, and we are going over to Finland to learn more about how to run RadioMan in an even deeper part of our production in the future, and take more advantages of the different functions and workflows that is internal in RadioMan. So yeah, that is how we are set up.
Thanks, Pål. And so we have some time for questions from the attendees. I think there are a couple of here in the chat. Will you send this presentation to the participants? I will send a recording of this webinar, and then from there you can have a look again. And another questions. What are the IT platform requirements for the media node, virtual machine, server, etc.?
So perhaps I can answer there. So that the media node itself can be run both on Windows environment or on Linux platform. We actually do prefer Linux platform, and then for the platform itself, it can be a physical machine, or it can be a virtual device, for instance, on VM environments, and then the platform itself different platforms typically support slightly different audio drivers and audio connectivity, so that for instance with Linux it's a bit more difficult, for instance, to get the support for AES-67 environment. And then if we look on physical cards, it's we can say that the Linux environment behaves slightly better in how to configure the different channels and how you can get multiple connectivities and so on. But platform itself is quite flexible. And then on the codecs, on the foils here, we have SRT codecs or SRT streaming. What we like with SRT is that it's the delays are low, and then there is still redundancy possibilities. For SRT codecs, we can use hardware codecs. Typically, we have been using two-way COM hardware boxes, and then we can also use software-based codecs. We have some SRT functionality already also within the media node, but for if we want to have multiple channels and different codings made simultaneously, then we are using the two-way COM MOIN software-based product, which has been interfaced or integrated with the with the RadioMan system. And but we can also utilize RTP and WebRTC and that kind of combinations, and then the different flavors of IP audio, like the AES and Livewire Dante. WeetNet has also been tested, and so on.
Okay, the next question. What kind of network protocols are used between RadioMan and cloud infrastructure? Do I need a VPN?
You don't need a VPN. What we are using is there's HTTP. Naturally, we are using HTML5 on the screens. Then we are using WebRTC for audio streaming or other streaming functionality, and then we are using some control active MQ controls for fast control functionalities between the user interfaces and the media nodes, and also with the backend. So VPN is not needed. Naturally, if you use VPN, it will give one level of more walling between the common internet, and so if you want to do other things with your infrastructure, then VPN might be useful. But also, if we have audio, for instance, audio editor, audio file uploads, downloads, all of those are done within the HTML environment, and we don't utilize any file accesses, for instance, to servers or anything like that. So VPN is not necessary.
And then, how stable are WebRTC connection into the cloud from field experience?
Typically, they are quite stable, because there's the experience we have been running is, for instance, so that we have the media nodes in the mainly in the AWS cloud, so that the backends have been in Stockholm, in USA, in Ireland, and then we have been running the systems from many locations. So they are quite stable.
And what kind of database are you using? Next question.
The databases we are using for large installations. We have been using IBM DB2 database, and then we have some smaller installations running with PostgreSQL, and that's, I think, the Postgre is going to expand more and more into use. We are not so much dependent on the specific features of any database, but we don't want to expand so much the database varieties, because it's always a question of testing everything with everything. So if you would have half a dozen database varieties, you would run lots of combinations for testing.
Thanks. Then the next question is for Pål. How is your everyday experience with production workflows where everybody works from remote? Does this work well? Where are the problems?
We don't, if you mean by work remote into the studio, we don't do that actually. We are sitting in the studio at all times when we produce. But so far, the experience with the RadioMan systems, both the cloud service, where we set up everything, where we import all sounds, where we handle all the media logistics and the communication down to the virtual server running the media node, has been flawless. There hasn't been any problem at all.
Okay, thank you.
Perhaps Olli-Pekka can add a little. During the COVID, there's been experiences on running remote all the operations.
Yeah, actually related to WebRTC, one of our customers, they needed to practically leave their premises overnight. It was end of March 2020, and they started the cloud production with the RadioMan 6. They were producing news from the home. They started May 2020. So we have now 2 years experiences. They are very happy. During this 2-month period before they started, we made a kind of a training camp where we put every millisecond of everywhere in a latency wise. So and the customer is CBS News, and if you visit our site, you can read the customer case.
Okay, thanks. And the next one, how well are the talents working with the cloud setup? Lots of training necessary. This might be also for Pål.
Well, of course, with every new system that you take into production, and there is a learning curve, of course. And for us, we haven't had any radio experience from before, and at the same time, we are not using the system as a radio station because we don't have a daily playlist with ad inserts and music inserts and stuff like that. So it's quite different. But I think that is, and I hope you guys at Jutel also feel that too, that it's a cool project that and then use your system in another way than regular customers maybe do. So, and but the system itself, it's easy, it's you just have to learn it and find your workflow, which for us, as I said, it's different from a radio workflow. So we are a little bit going the way the path as we go. So we have to figure out how do we want to use the system and to make it as optimal as possible for our production environment with all the different podcast recordings. This is not live, it's recording, or it's mainly live on tape, the things where we use RadioMan. So we try to publish the podcast as it is produced from beginning to end. It's only the more like deeper journalistic news recordings that isn't live on tape. They are handled in post-production afterwards. Yeah, it's the system itself. It's quite like classical. If you have been working with some kind of rundown system for TV in the past, like Octopus or ESPN or something like that, you get your way around it. You get the feel of it's quite classical administration of a rundown or a daily playlist. But yeah, for us it's a new thing. It's not a daily playlist that we are doing. It's like show based from show to show, and they will all be different. So we need to find our way around it, and we are doing that together with the guys at Jutel.
Thank you.
One thing with the cloud-based system is that for starting to use is that it's very easy to start with, because today you decide that you are going to start to operate the system. It takes 15 minutes to configure the system up and you have a total training system. If you want to have, you can have another training system, and you can try different workflows, and then simultaneously you can start to configure the actual system you are going to use. So there's no period of waiting to order servers, to install the servers, to install the networks, doing that kind of, and all the time you can have a training system in the background, so that it's, for instance, sleeping, and it takes just a few very small time to start it and running, also for different tests and that kind of things. So to start using the system is very smooth.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other questions? I think I went whole list through here. Unless not, I guess we are ending this session for the day. And thank you for the panelists. Thanks, Pål, for joining us today and opening up your insights of your podcast production. Thank you, Olli-Pekka and Jorma. And thanks for our attendees today.
And if you have any further questions, don't hesitate to send an email or so on.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.